Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are setting aside the headlines, the quick summaries.
We're going deeper.
Much deeper. We're going all the way down to the foundational structure, the skeleton that supports every single piece of rigorous research you encounter.
Right. And this isn't just for academics. This is about understanding how to move from, a simple, curious idea to a fully structured, purpose-driven project.
Exactly. How does that happen?
Well, our mission today is to really unpack that architecture. We're talking about problem statements, research questions, and this is the big one, hypotheses.
And seeing how they change completely depending on your goal.
That's the key. Are you trying to measure something specific that's quantitative? Or are you trying to, explore a human experience that's qualitative?
So for you, the listener, the goal here is clarity. By the end of this, you'll have the skills to look at a study's framework and just know if it's built on solid ground.
We'll walk through the 5 key steps for quantitative work and then see how different the roadmap looks when you're exploring, not measuring.
Let's get right into it then. Section 1, the quantitative blueprint.
The blueprint. I like that.
It feels right because if you're dealing with numbers, with stats, you need that architectural approach. There's really no room for ambiguity.
None at all. Methodological soundness is everything. If your foundation is even a little bit shaky,
Your fancy statistics don't matter one bit. So let's unpack these 5 components.
think of it like a funnel. Each step narrows the focus, taking you from a broad topic right down to something you can actually test with numbers.
Okay, so we start at the widest part of the funnel, the research title.
Right, and it sounds simple, but a good title is doing some serious heavy lifting.
It's more than just a label.
Oh, absolutely. It's a concise summary. A strong title has to tell you the focus, the main variables, the population, and the context, all in a breath.
Okay, give us the example.
The influence of digital learning tools on student motivation in Malaysian higher education institutions.
Wow, okay. In just a dozen words, I know the cause, the effect, the who, and the where.
Exactly. The boundaries are set.
So that sets the boundaries. But what's driving the study in the first place? That has to be the problem statement.
This is, and I'm not exaggerating, probably the most vital step. The problem statement is where you identify that gap in our knowledge.
The thing we don't know.
The thing we don't know, or the contradiction we've found. It has to answer the fundamental question, why are we doing this study?
I see so many proposals that fail right there. They describe a topic like, oh, digital tools are popular.
But that's not a problem.
Right, it's not a gap. The gap is we don't know if these popular tools are actually helping motivation or maybe just distracting students.
That distinction is everything. Once you've justified the why, then you can move on to the research objectives.
These are the practical steps.
The practical, measurable, achievable goals. The SMART goals. They're the roadmap for how you're going to fill that knowledge gap you just identified.
So if the problem is we're unsure about motivation, the objective is to evaluate the effects of digital tools on student motivation levels.
Exactly. And from that objective, the research questions just naturally flow.
And for quantitative, these can't be fluffy. They have to be specific.
Incredibly specific and measurable, because each question has to map directly onto a statistical test you're going to run later, no ambiguity allowed.
And this alignment, this funnel, leads us to the sharpest point, the 5th component, the hypotheses.
This is where the rubber really meets the road. A hypothesis is your educated, testable prediction.
It's not a question anymore.
No, it's a declarative statement. It turns your inquiry into something statistically operable. You're moving from just observing to actually predicting an outcome.
Okay, so let's run our example through that whole sequence. Problem. We don't know if digital tools help motivation. Research question. What's the relationship between using these tools and student motivation?
And then the hypothesis becomes the statement we put on trial, H1. There is a significant positive relationship between the use of digital learning tools and student motivation.
And now you have something that data can either support or reject.
That's it. That rigor, that structure, that is the hallmark of the quantitative blueprint.
That makes perfect sense for when you need to measure something, but what if you're not trying to predict? What if you're just trying to understand?
And that is the perfect transition to section 2, the qualitative compass.
A compass, not a blueprint.
Exactly. If quantitative is a telescope looking for broad, generalizable patterns, then qualitative is a microscope. It's for getting up close.
You're trying to understand the depth of an experience, right? The meaning people attach to things.
Yes, exactly. We're looking at perceptions, complex social stuff. So we prioritize flexibility and rich stories. not statistical proof.
Which means the first thing we do is throw out the hypothesis.
Gone. Because a hypothesis demands you predict an outcome. In qualitative work, you can't do that. You're exploring. So instead, you have a purpose statement.
Okay, so how is that different?
A purpose statement defines the scope and the direction, but it's deliberately broad and open-ended. It sets you up for discovery, not for proof. It just points the compass.
So sticking with our example of teachers and digital tools,
Yeah.
what would that sound like?
Well, instead of predicting a relationship, the qualitative purpose statement might be something like, this study aims to explore the lived experiences of secondary school teachers as they adopt digital learning tools in urban Malaysian schools.
Oh, okay. The language is so different. Explore lived experiences.
We're not measuring motivation scores. We're trying to understand how they feel about it, what the transition was actually like for them.
And so the qualitative research questions have to reflect that same curiosity.
Right.
They have to be open. They're all about the how and the why, not the how much. They're designed to get people talking, to invite these long, detailed stories.
So you might ask something like, how do teachers perceive the impact of these tools on their classroom dynamics?
Perfect. Or, what challenges and benefits do you actually experience when you try to use these tools in your teaching? The goal is to uncover themes you didn't even know existed. And this gets at the core difference in what the research can ultimately give you. Quantitative work, with its statistics, it's aiming for generalizability.
Meaning the results can be applied to a much larger population.
But qualitative work can't do that. You're only talking to a few people.
Right. So instead, it aims for transferability. We generate findings that are so detailed, so rich with context, what some call thick description, that they resonate. Someone else in a similar situation can read it and say, yes, that feels true to my experience too.
Yeah, it's powerful. One finds truth in the crowd, the other finds truth in the specific detailed story.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we have the frameworks. Now let's get practical in section 3 and talk about the research design itself, the actual plan of attack.
The overarching strategy.
Right.
We have the two we've discussed. First, the quantitative design.
That's your surveys, your experiments, systematic collection of numerical data to spot patterns and, hopefully relationships.
Then you've got your qualitative design. This is where you're interpreting non-numerical data, so interviews, focus groups, just observing. It's built for those deep how and why questions where the context is king.
And then there's a third way, right? A blend.
Yes, mixed methods. This is where you integrate both, and it can be incredibly powerful.
How so?
Well, you might start with a big quantitative survey and find a really surprising correlation, but the numbers don't tell you why it exists.
So you follow up with qualitative interviews to get the story behind the stats.
Exactly. It's a technique called triangulation. You're looking at the problem from multiple angles to get a much richer, more credible picture.
Now, the design you choose totally changes who you study. Which brings us to sampling techniques. This feels like a huge fork in the road.
It is a massive fork in the road. If you're quantitative, your goal is a sample that represents the entire population, so you have to use probability sampling.
Meaning random selection.
Random is the keyword. Simple, random, stratified, cluster sampling. They all ensure every person has a known chance of being selected. That's how you can generalize your findings.
But in a qualitative study, being random would actually hurt your goal.
It would completely undermine it. You use non-probability sampling. You are deliberately, purposefully selecting participants based on specific criteria.
So you're not looking for average, you're looking for insight.
Targeted, deep insight. You might use purposive sampling to find, say, the 5 teachers with the most experience using a new tool because their rich experience is exactly what you want to explore.
This all builds up to the ultimate test of a study's quality. The 2 pillars that tell us if we can actually trust the findings: validity and reliability.
And this is where it gets really interesting because people use these words interchangeably all the time.
But they are not the same thing.
Not at all. Let's use an analogy. Imagine you're shooting arrows at a target.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Reliability is about consistency. If you shoot 5 arrows and they all land tightly clumped together in the top left corner, you are reliable. Your method is consistent.
But they're all in the wrong place. They're nowhere near the bullseye.
Precisely. Your measurement is consistent, but it's consistently wrong. That's where validity comes in.
Validity is accuracy.
Validity is accuracy. Is your instrument, your survey, your experiment actually measuring what you claim it's measuring? Are you hitting the bullseye?
So if your 5 arrows are all tightly clustered right in the center of the bullseye.
Then you have high reliability and high validity. That's the gold standard.
So if my survey is supposed to measure student motivation, but all it really measures is how much the students like their teacher,
Then your results might be very reliable. They consistently tell you the teacher is well-liked, but they are completely invalid as a measure of motivation.
that's a perfect explanation. It makes so much sense.
And, reliability is the foundation. If your results are all over the place, they can't be trusted. But validity is the real prize. It ensures those stable results actually mean something in the real world. You can be reliably wrong, but you have to be accurate to be valid.
What a fantastic journey through the architecture of research. So to recap, we've got the very structured, predictive path of quantitative research.
Driven by specific questions and testable hypotheses.
And we contrasted that with the exploratory, flexible path of qualitative research, which is guided by these open-ended purpose statements and questions.
All designed for that deep contextual understanding. And we saw how your design and your sampling have to align perfectly with whichever path you choose.
And we close with those critical measures of quality. Validity, are you accurate? And reliability, are you consistent?
And understanding that difference, really understanding it, is probably the most valuable tool you can have as a critical consumer of information.
It really is. So here's the final thought we want to leave you with from this deep dive. The next time you see a study, a news report, a political poll, anything that's based on data,
Don't just skip to the conclusion.
no, ask yourself,
Yeah.
based on how they define their terms and how they pick their sample, are they really measuring what they claim to be measuring? Is it valid?
And if they did it all over again tomorrow, would they get roughly the same result? Is it reliable?
The structure informs the trust.
Absolutely. So go out there and question the structure.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.